and hopefully there'll be lots of questions.
Sure.
And Heather's on it. All right. Hello, everyone. And thank you for joining us today as we continue ACE's webinar series on accessibility. I'm Tanya Lee Martin, Associate Director for Communications with the University of California Integrated Pest Management Program. And I'm also co-chair of the Diversity and Accessibility Learning Community here at ACE. And of course, like a little plug for ACE, if you're not a current ACE member, please consider joining, especially if you enjoy events like this. And I put that info in the chat for you. The Diversity and Accessibility Learning Community wants to thank ACE for funding this webinar series with a professional development grant. And we also want to thank future ACE presenters for sharing their expertise in helping all of us learn a little bit more about accessibility. And with that, I will introduce today's presenter and thank her in advance for sharing her expertise. I'm excited to introduce Diana Hagan. As coordinator for Electronic Data Information System Publications at the University of Florida Institute of Food and Agricultural Science, Diana has over 20 years experience facilitating the production of structured HTML and PDF documents from Word manuscripts. Before coming to the Institute of Food and Agricultural Science, she had been a map and agricultural materials cataloger at the University of Florida Libraries and a Latin teacher. She has a master's degree in library and information science and Latin and a graduate certificate in biomedical informatics. In her spare time, she enjoys knitting, crocheting, and the New York Times games. So Diana's going to share with us the instructional video she developed. And as it's playing, please put any questions that you might have into chat, and Diana and maybe some help from other Floridians will be answering them. And we'll also have time for questions too at the end. Okay, so Diana, please go ahead with accessible Word best practices.
Thank you. There's going to be a very short PowerPoint, few slides, and then about 4 minutes in, it'll switch to Microsoft Word for the rest of the webinar. You can go along with in Word yourself if you want to with the presentation. So let me share my screen here.
Hello.
Are you seeing it?
Welcome back to What is ADA and How
Yes.
a webinar for digital publications. This installment is Accessible Word Best Practices. I am Diana Hagan, Information Management Specialist with UF IFAS Communications. In this webinar, I'll be covering tools and best practices for creating documents in Microsoft Word. Also, in this series, I present creating accessible PDFs from Word and accessible PowerPoint best practices. And my colleagues Tracy Bryant, Michelle Wood, and Heather Griffith present a webinar on creating accessible documents in InDesign. The purpose of these webinars is to help bridge the gap between being aware that your documents should be accessible to adding accessibility checking as part of how you regularly do your work. Additional resources are provided at the end for you should you have need of them. So let's get started. Microsoft has developed robust tools for making documents accessible. They're always improving their accessibility features, so you will have best results if you use the latest professional versions of Office. In this presentation, I'll be using Office 365 Professional. They also have good documentation on using their accessibility tools. And once you get the concepts of accessibility down, you may find guidance from some of the best practices in general Microsoft Word tutorials and training on sites such as office.com or LinkedIn Learning, even if the trainings are not specifically intended for accessibility. WebAIM is a go-to resource for accessibility resources, and especially if you are in an educational or government agency, do not overlook specific resources and services provided by your own institution. The key issue with documents are how the document is structured and the tags are used. Tags label content. For example, a level 1 heading or an alternative text for a figure. They help users navigate. Someone visually reading a document might scan just the headers or use them to locate a certain spot where they want to find specific information, or they might skip to a list of resources at the end. People using screen readers similarly can navigate the structure provided by headings, or might list all hyperlinks first when they open a page if they're trying to navigate through to a specific resource. Tags help define the structure and the reading order to make that navigation possible. Consistent tagging using common tags also makes it easier for computer algorithms and software applications to use the data within your documents for purposes such as research, preservation, content management, or migration to a new format. Consistent tags are essential for creating an accessible PDF, and they can be efficiently mapped to equivalent styles when importing to InDesign. In this session, I'll be working with 4 different panels, which once opened typically are docked on the right side of your Word window. I'll also cover some key content elements and how to work with them in a way that makes your documents most accessible for all users. At this point, we'll switch to Microsoft Word to demonstrate. Setting up Word. So here we are in a new Word document. The first thing we're going to do is to open the accessibility checker, which can provide real-time feedback as we work. In the latest version of Word, there's an accessibility section on the review ribbon. Here we go, with shortcuts to the accessibility tools. If I click on this check accessibility icon, it'll open up the panel here in the sidebar. And since this is an empty document, there are no issues found. Under this check accessibility menu, there are quick links to other features. There is the alt text pane, the navigation pane, the focus mode, and accessibility settings in the Windows option menu. Now, if we go back to the home ribbon, we'll see some of the other tools we're going to be working with. We're going to look at this styles section here in the middle. It provides a quick access to the document styles. It also opens up using this little square icon with the arrow in the corner to a styles pane, which can then dock into the side of the window. And it lists all of the styles that are in use in the document. Finally, the style inspector is a little button down here in the bottom of the style pane with a magnifying glass. It allows us to see what styles are applied to any given piece of selected text. The little icons here in the far right hand will allow us to switch between the various windows. So let's start writing. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to set up the title. Titles are important. They're the key piece of information that tells you what you're looking at in a document. So the first thing you're going to do is type out your title. I'm going to drop the text in here. And we're going to simply style it using our styles on the styles pane as H1. Now we also use the title of a document as a label outside the document itself in a citation or in a catalog, file list, or search results entry. Descriptive information or metadata about a Word document are called document properties. Adding the title to the document properties makes it easier for computer applications and people to identify and work with documents. You get to the document properties by clicking on File and then Info. In the right of the window under Properties, some of the key metadata is listed, including the title, with a field to enter it right there. And you should enter exactly the same title as you have in the document. Now, the word accessibility checker will not tell you if the title is missing from the document properties. So one habit that can help you to consistently remember it is to add the title field to the header or footer as a running title. Just double click in the header or the footer to select that area, make it active, and notice how we switched to the new header and footer or ribbon here. Select document info here in the insert section of the ribbon, and then document title under there. It'll add the field for the title, which you had filled in from the file info page. And now you can view or even add or edit the title from the document properties there in the document footer while you're working. And when you use the document, it will always be there as a running title at the foot of the document. Microsoft has great instructions for adding useful fields to documents as in the header or the footer on their support site. I've included a link to it in the resources list for this session. Now let's talk about adding alt text. To save some time, I've pasted in the content that we're going to work with. And let's see what the accessibility checker says about this new content. Looks like we need to check the alt text. These actually did not have alt text before I pasted them, but Word's intelligent services helpfully suggested some. Since these AI-generated suggestions are almost universally not correct or sufficient, I'm going to show you how to turn this feature off under Options Accessibility. So we're going to go to our Options menu, Accessibility, and turn that off. Now, select the image that we want to add the alt text to, right click on it, and then we can open the alt text pane. Remember, we can also get to this and to that Options Accessibility panel through the Check Accessibility menu here. Notice that the AI identified this incorrectly as a crocodile eating grass. Let's clear that out. But what should we put in its place? Here are some basic tips for alt text. First, pay attention to what's needed for the context. Keep the description basic if the image doesn't need it, but go in depth about the details of the image that are relevant to understanding what's being conveyed. So it's often going to depend on the context, not strictly on the image itself. In this case, there's text surrounding the image referring to it and a caption, so a lot of detail isn't needed. But the picture is a little playful, so some text to capture that might be appropriate. Alt text should be short, fewer than 160 characters. If you have a complex image that requires more detailed description, you can refer to any written description in the nearby text or the caption, or you can include a link near the image to a separate file with a lengthy description. On the other hand, if it isn't meaningful, tell assistive technology to ignore it by checking the Mark as Decorative box. If the document will be migrated to Adobe Acrobat or InDesign, this will translate to artifacting in Adobe Acrobat or InDesign. If you want to learn more, I've added some resources for writing alt text in the resources section. For this image, let's say, a close-up photo from the side of the head and front leg of an adult American alligator facing the edge of the water. It's eyeing the camera with its leg around a clump of grass. Now that it's open, accessibility checker pane, and go to the next figure. Let's see, figure 3. For figure 2 alt text, the surrounding description and the caption describe the picture pretty well, and an additional alt text would probably be redundant. You can put just see caption. We'll do the same for figure 3. There we go. And we're back to no accessibility issues found. Next, we're going to work with the styles. So we're going to go back to our home ribbon here, to our styles pane. Remember that we want consistent tagging to make the content more adjustable to different devices. We get that by using styles. So for the headings in our document, we're going to use the styles for heading 2, heading 3, etc. Let's look at the document structure using the navigation pane. Best, easiest way to get there is through the Check Accessibility menu and open the navigation pane. It opens on the left and it will show the structure of the document. Only the title is showing up here, which tells me that my headers are not styled properly. This happens because the person who wrote it used a character and paragraph formatting instead of a heading style. So it looks right to our eyes, but it doesn't work right for tagging the document. And by character and the font and paragraph styles, I mean, instead of using one of the styles, like for a heading 2, they may have used bold or coloring or centered or other things, formatting for each of the headings instead of using a defined style. Notice that the accessibility checker here did not catch this problem. So to avoid doing this, with a few exceptions, make it a rule not to use this font and paragraph sections of the home ribbon at all. Just try not to use them. So to fix this, we're going to go through and just select our headers and use the style to just change them to a heading. So how do they reproduce? Notice as I do this, they show up in our outline in the navigation panel. On misconceptions. And these are going to be nested underneath it as level 3 headings. Then we're going to go back up to level 2 with our additional information. It's a requirement that the headings follow a logical order. So you cannot jump from a heading 2 to a heading 4, although you can go from a 4 back up to a 2. So that you're not just jumping around based on how it looks, but it's following a logical structure. So now this navigation pane shows us the structure of the document, and we can move about the document by selecting which header we're interested in. Now we have some character coding that uses bold and italic instead of strong and emphasis. I can tell this by selecting some text, like this alligator sinensis here, and looking at it here in the style inspector. So it shows a default paragraph font for the text level formatting, and then it has additional formatting from the font formatting of italic. So I could go through and change each of these using the styles menu to emphasis instead, like I did with the headings. But because things like bold and emphasis are scattered throughout the document, it can be more efficient to use find and replace to do this. So I'm going to open up the replace menu using Control H. You can also use the here on the editing section of the ribbon. And instead of putting a string here in the find area, I'm going to go here down in the more under the search options, and I'm going to look for the format, the font format of italic, and click OK. And then in the replace field, I'm also not going to replace it with a string. I'm going to go down here under format, and I'm going to select a style, and that style is going to be emphasis. If I can find it. There we go, emphasis. We'll go ahead and you can look for the next one if you want to make sure that you're getting it. And I'm just going to go ahead and replace all. And there's 5 in the document. And then you can do the same thing here with bold, changing bold to strong. So here I've got the cursor in the find field, and I'm going to change from font from italic to bold. And then the style from emphasis to strong. And replace all. And there were 11 of those. There we go. So now if I put my cursor on this crocodilii, I see that it's strong instead of being bold. And I can open it up in the style inspector here and see it doesn't have any extraneous formatting. Now the heading styles and strong and emphasis are 2 different categories of style. A paragraph style will apply to the style to the whole paragraph where your cursor is. So if I put my cursor here, that whole paragraph would get the normal paragraph formatting. The character style will apply to only the selected characters. And you can tell which is which for each style here to the right of each of the styles and the style panel. Some of these styles have both a character and a paragraph symbol. They're defined as link styles, and Word allows them to be applied either way. But it's generally a good idea to disable the link styles, which you can do by unchecking this checking this box down here at the bottom, since link styles allow you to apply styles in ways that can be confusing to people using assistive devices. And this will force all of these link styles to act like paragraph styles. So going forward, once you've disabled the link styles, all of these paragraph and character link styles would then act. You can just think of them as paragraph styles. Now, one of the powerful things about styles is that you can modify them and change everything at once consistently. Let's say I want to change the look of my strong styled content. I'm going to make it orange as well as bold. I can right click on the strong style here to reveal the drop down menu for the style and select modify. And this will be applied every time I've used bold in the document, or in the future, it will make this change. And we're going to change the color here from automatic to an orange color. Here we go. And there we see we've changed all of our bullets. Oh, looks like I've got all of our headings here are also bold. That's not right. Look, I've got this categorized as strong also, which I shouldn't have. So I'm going to select all of my heading 2s and I'm going to make sure that they are not strong. There we go. I fixed them. That might be the case for my heading 3. See, they are too. So I'm going to select all of my heading 3s, select all 4 instances, and I'm going to clear out that strong. There we go. So now it's just my bold that's got the orange color. This can be really helpful if you're trying to, as you're trying to work with a document and you want to keep track of things, you can make it a bright color and then you can change it at the end to make it look more aesthetically pleasing. You can also create a new style. So one reason you might want to create a new style is to add a page break before a heading without hard coding a page break to the document. So let's go back to our style tab, open it up, there we go. And I'm going to select heading 2. And I'm going to click on the A+ button here. That's to add a style. See how since I had a heading 2 selected, the style is based on heading 2. And I'm going to rename it. Best practice is to name it with this starting the same way as the base style. A new page. And leave everything else the same, except that I need to go back down into this format menu, and the new page is going to be a paragraph, lines and page breaks here, and just add a page break before. And the one that I had selected there, which this should be empty. Let's say I want a new page. Alligators reproduce, and we're going to make that heading 2 new page. So page 1, page 2. It still is logically a heading 2, but it gives me stylistically a new page. Now let's check how we're doing in our accessibility checker. Uh-oh, I've caused a problem. It says hard to read text contrast. Looks like the color that I chose for bold is not a sufficient contrast to pass the accessibility checker. And it's harder to understand because of that. Poor color contrast makes elements of the document challenging to read for people with poor vision and makes the content more difficult to understand for everyone. The Word Accessibility tool now can check the documents as you work for text color against many types of backgrounds. If you don't use this tool or for situations the tool can't detect, like the contrast within an image, you'll need to check manually to make sure there's sufficient contrast. I provided links to the contrast checking tools in the resource section. The default setting for Word is a white document with black text, and the default style setting has color choices that are already accessible. You can also search for Office templates using the search term accessible to find templates designed for accessibility, which should have color palettes that have sufficient contrast. When using color in your document, remember, you never want to have color as the only means of conveying information. Some people cannot see certain shades of color and your message will be lost to them. So to fix this issue, first we'll look and see what the recommended action is. So it'll tell us we can change the page color or we can modify the style. So we're gonna modify the style. And we're going to go here and we're going to look for, let's do some more colors. I've already picked a color here that's going to work. That's a D3 2731. And the hex code, it's a different orange. A reddish orange, I guess. That's going to pass the test. Now let's talk about accessible lists. Lists are a visual way of structuring a document that provide a hierarchical structure, allowing readers to understand and navigate the content quickly. In order for people using assistive devices to use lists this way, they must be styled or tagged as lists. This means you cannot just make lines that look like a list using a hyphen or asterisk. If you let it, Word will usually autocorrect these to make a proper list when you intend, whether you intend to or not. But sometimes when pasting a correctly formatted list from one place to another, the formatting does get lost. So you should always check them. In most other situations, the best practice is to use that styles panel that I've been telling you to use to format your list, but especially since nested and numbered lists can be complex, it's okay to use the list tools in the paragraph section for your bulleted lists or your numbered lists here in the home ribbon. So we're going to go to our additional information section here at the bottom, and we're going to style this as a list. A numbered list or a bullet list, whichever you prefer. Okay, let's take some time to talk about hyperlinks in the document. We know the structure of the document that the headings create is for people using assistive devices to navigate the document. Hyperlinks are also very important. Many people using screen readers make use of hyperlinks on first opening a document or starting a new section to quickly assess not only the content in the document, but also where they may want to navigate next. Since links are taken out of context when used for this purpose, text like "click here" can be useless and frustrating and is not allowed by the standards. It's also tedious and uninformative to listen to long lists of URLs spelled out, so it's preferred to use a descriptive label instead of a plain link. If these were references, we'd leave these links as is to follow correct citation style, but for this informal list, we should edit it to embed the links in the descriptive label. Use Control-K to edit the links. So we can just cut that and then Control-K, drop that link there. Oops. There you go. Now, we've talked some about images and how to add alt text to make sure everyone can perceive what the image is intended to communicate. In addition to images, text boxes, tables, graphs, shapes, and other graphic elements are often included in documents and can be problematic if they are not placed in a way that shows where they belong in the document structure. That can be resolved by how the image is placed. Images should be placed in line with the text. You do this so that it can be presented to users of assistive technology in the correct reading order. So if we go back to our saucy alligator here. We can check by right-clicking on the image and opening up the context menu and select wrap text here. And then make sure that inline with text is selected. If you see a little anchor beside an image, you know that you have to fix it because it's anchored on the page rather than being in a position in the text. I did this, see how the anchor appears. We want it to be inline. This can mess up the layout, but you don't want to do things like add extra returns or other formatting that's going to cause problems. Instead, what we're going to do is apply a style to give the images the look that we want to have visually. So, and an inline object like an image inserted this way behaves like a text character. So one thing you can do is create an image style that gives you the appearance you want. So we're going to add a style by going here and using the add a style button, E+. I'm basing this on normal. And I'm going to give it the name normal image since this is based on the normal style. It's good practice to keep that name from the beginning. Right now I'm going to center it. Not that, I'm going to center it. And I'm going to give it 12 points before and after. Let's see. Yeah, 12 points before and after. And while I'm working on it, let's go ahead and put a green border around it so we know that it's there. Let's see, go here in the border and then put a box around it. Make that green, make it really wide. Apply that to the paragraph. There we go. And the nice thing is that we can change the way this looks later. So there I know I've got this styled as an image. It's centered, and I've got that little bit of a 12 point buffer. Now all I need to do for my image styling is click on the next image and style it as a normal image. By applying this image paragraph style for all the images in the document, they will all behave exactly the same way. And I won't have to spend a lot of time fiddling with the layout for each image in the document. I can change the style once here, and it'll be applied to all of them. Let's talk about tables. Tables are another area where an extra effort needs to be made to make it possible for users to navigate and understand tabular content that's presented in a matrix. Do make sure you are limiting your use of tables to only data that requires a table format. The use of bullet lists and the lack of content at the bottom right suggests that this information could be better delivered without using a table. To make it possible to navigate a table, it's required to define column headers. Row headers can also be defined but are optional. This table has both column headers and row headers. To make sure that they're defined, we go to the table design ribbon, and you can make sure that this is showing by making sure you click anywhere in the table. And then go to this table style options section in the far left and click on header row and or first column there. We're going to do both because we have both the rows and column headers. You should avoid merged cells, but they're permissible in headers. So if we look at our accessibility it warns that we have a merged cell here, doesn't like it. We can either split up the cells or we can delete it. This has 3 columns. There we go, that fixes it, but that's not really what we want. We want to just get rid of it. That also fixes it. Now, tables by the standards must have a title and alt text, but the word accessibility checker will not tell you if these are missing. So to add them, you need to, or check them, you need to right click on the table, go to table properties, then look on this alt text tab. If it's not showing, just go ahead and click on it. And we're going to need to add some text. This is a grid providing definitions and instructions to the public. Crocodile facility safety mechanisms. So this is, if it's a complicated, lengthy table, this will provide somebody with a glance about the contents. This includes the session on accessibility best practices for Word. I do go into more detail on visual elements such as tables and charts in the PowerPoint presentation. And please see the accessible PDF presentation for using Adobe's accessibility tools when converting your Word documents to PDF format. I hope you have found this tutorial to be useful. Please see the recommended resources list if you want to learn more. Thank you very much.
Are there any questions?
While people are thinking, I just want to thank you, Diana, for sharing this resource. I had a couple of aha moments with the navigation and with the photo style, so I appreciate that very much.
Sure. And you asked about well, how do styles help? And strong and emphasis instead of using strong and emphasis instead of the bold and italic. The POUR principles is one of the things that is sort of one of the acronyms used in accessibility, that things should be perceivable, operationable, understandable, and robust. And when someone is using assistive technology to read a document, the styling that's done, the sort of hard-coded styling that's done using bold and italic on the character level is omitted when it's being read. So it's not perceivable that, for example, the title of a book is in italics or a scientific name. So someone using assistive devices may not have that piece of information that a visual, someone reading it visually, we would see, oh, that's a scientific name, and no write off because we see it in italics. So you're providing some sort of semantic coding by using the correct styles that is making up for the person not seeing it visually. Then the robust part of the POUR acronym is when if you're transferring it to another format, it carries over that formatting more easily when you use a style. So using it, styling it with emphasis and bold instead of using the character formatting means that you're not going to lose that styling if you have to transfer it to another format as easily. So yeah, the recording of that I played is available now. And then we may or may not have another recording of this session. We may just use the recording that we have, depending on the quality of this recording and whether there's more information in this latter part. I hope that this has been helpful for folks. Yeah, I think we probably need to do some kind of a cheat sheet for Mac users. We tried to do both Mac and PC in this presentation, and it just got too confusing to have both at the same time. Yeah.
You're getting a lot of thumbs up on the Mac cheat sheet. I have a Mac
Yeah.
as well, and I didn't realize, I think a lot of the things that you talked about were available because like someone pointed out in the chat, I didn't have that drop down menu to see that they were there.
Mm-hmm. Did any of you go along in Word on your own, or using this? Did you use the script? Was it helpful?
In the chat, someone said it was great to have the script to refer back to.
Great, thanks, CJ.
Yeah, and me, Mac user, I tried, I tried to follow it. I had it up, and then I also tried to just get a Word document of my own and try to do the same things that you were doing. And when I couldn't get the drop down menu, I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna have to watch.
I tried to pull up the Microsoft does have the link to making your Word documents accessible on the Microsoft site has Mac OS instructions. And I just put it in the chat. I pulled it up during the presentation, and it went. It came up on the same screen that y'all were watching, so I couldn't get to my browser. But there it is in the chat now. So they have it for Mac OS and also for iOS and Android. So the same instructions that there are for the PC are also.
I see that. Thank you.
So now I have homework to do the Mac cheat sheet.
What other questions do you have for Diana? While people are thinking, I do have a quick question about styles again. Do you have a way to keep styles from going from document to document? So if I have a styles I really like, and I want to keep that for numerous documents, is that a template, or how do I do that so I don't have to keep on doing the same styles over and over, setting them again over and over on the document?
Yes, so you can save. You can have a template that's a specific set of styles. And then managing a template, that gets a little bit more complicated. There's where in the resources list I suggested LinkedIn Learning, there's a lot of the advanced Word classes talk about managing templates and things like that. So it's not specifically about accessibility, but it will help you to keep track of templates. You can also, if you cut and paste and you keep the styles and you cut and paste it into another document, then you get those styles in the new document. Now, the example I used in this training was very, very simple and very, very clean. In real life, you end up with a lot of messy styles. And one of the things you might end up using a lot is that clear styles button that you can just clear all the styles out, start over with like basically nothing. So the work that I was doing with the bold and the italics, that's kind of, you end up doing that with a lot of things. So I kind of use that, not so much that bold and italics are horrible, but that's similar to a lot of work you can end up doing if you're trying to eliminate formatting all over a document that you're working with. So you can end up having little messes from different style sheets from different documents if you're working between one and another. Best to keep things simple.
Sometimes academics have their own version of what simple can be. So that can make it tough.
So yeah, we have a template that we use for our publications that we've started to get people in the habit of just using to start off with when they start creating a publication. And then just keep the number of styles to a minimum so they're not adding a whole lot of junk in there. And there's whole classes on writing alternative text, Stephanie. And I'm not sure, I wouldn't necessarily take my guidance on what I wrote because I'm not an expert on that, but there's an art to it, definitely. It is, I think there's how much detail to get into is challenging with it. Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Yes, thank you, everyone. And let's thank Diana again before you leave. Thank you very much. This was really great. And to close out, please fill out our webinar evaluation survey. And I hope we'll see you again in 2 months. Our next webinar is July 13th, and it's going to be with Amory Lohman. She'll be presenting an introduction to website accessibility. So hopefully we'll see you again in 2 months. And thank you again, Diana. And thank you, Heather, as well, for your help.